This is The Shift, Stories of Resistance and Resilience, a multi-platform conversation series produced and hosted by Mark Travis Rivera, the professional storyteller. I believe that we must embrace the power of stories to create a more inclusive world. So this series aims to share perspectives, insights, and stories from professionals around the world about the role that resistance and resilience plays in our personal and professional lives. So, tune in, listen up, take notes, and recognize our shared humanity. This is The Shift. Hey y'all, welcome back. I have to be honest, we're doing something we've never done before here on The Shift. I am opening us up to set the foundation, but today I am also the guest. That's right. For those of you who are new, allow me to introduce myself and this podcast of mine called The Shift. The Shift is a podcast series exploring stories of resistance and resilience from activists, creatives, and leaders across industries who are boldly challenging the status quo. Through honest conversations and powerful storytelling, we uncover how people shift systems, narratives, and culture to create a more inclusive, just, and liberated world. If you believe in the power of stories to spark change, this podcast is for you. Hosted and produced by me, Mark Travis Rivera, CEO and founder of The Professional Storyteller, where we embrace the power of stories to create a more inclusive world. And this podcast is a multi-platform podcast, but it originally started off as a LinkedIn Live audio series that always had different levels and different themes. But since Trump got reelected, I want to focus on the themes of resistance and resilience. And I think I'm going to keep that the theme for the rest of the series because I think that is the most, we've had some of the best conversations with this theme. And so, anywho, just breaking news there. We're keeping the theme the same moving forward. But today, one of their episodes already aired. Part 2 is dropping, I believe we said before this one drops. So part 1 and part 2 of my conversation with today's guest host, Araya Baker. We will include their bio in the show notes as well. But you all should check out the 2 episodes that we did together to learn more about Araya's story and their work. And when Araya suggested this to me, it was like, my team and I were talking about me answering each question that I asked every guest as individual episodes, like solo episodes. Newsflash, I don't like solo episodes. I'm not good at them. I'm only good at conversations. And so I was like dreading doing them. And then you, Araya, suggested this idea. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the perfect solution to my wanting to answer the questions for folks, but not wanting to do it as a solo episode format. So with that said, for those of you who know me well, you know I'm a control freak. And so Araya has agreed to follow our format in terms of the 3 questions we ask every guest, but then they're adding in some questions that they want to ask. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming back Araya Baker.
Welcome to the show, Mark. This is going to be so awkward for you to be in the interviewee seat, but
I know. I interview on podcasts all the time. We were talking about this before jumping in. But it's something about it being my own show that makes me nervous. But I couldn't think of a better person than you to do this. So thank you so much for suggesting it. Thank you for your time. And as always, for how you show up in the world.
Thank you. That's so sweet. Well, the folks already know you. So like you said, the bio will be in the show notes.
Yes.
We usually start off with a bio, or that's been my experience on the show.
Yes. But I'm not going to have someone read my bio on my own show. That just feels weird.
And so I guess like to transition from what would be the bio, the next question would be, who are you outside of any professional highlights that might be in your bio or that folks might read in your bio in the show notes?
Yeah. First and foremost, I'm a lover. I love love. And I often joke around that I'm the J-Lo of my friend group. Because people always say I would never make it in my career. And I stay booked, busy, and blessed, even though when they say I lack talent, baby, I don't lack bookings, okay? And so I also can't get love right. So I always joke around that I am the J-Lo of my friend group, and we both happen to be from the Northeast, and we both happen to be Puerto Rican, and we both happen to have nice duck-a-ducks, okay? And so I'm a lover first and foremost. I am a son. I say that with hesitation because my parents are my parents, and I don't have a relationship with either one of them right now. Never really had a relationship with my father, but my mom and I have always kind of had a really interesting dynamic. I am a little brother, and I think I have to emphasize that because I am the peak typical little brother annoying sibling that my sister also helped raise. Of all my identities, being an uncle, a tío is probably one of the most the identities that I love the most. I love my nieces and nephews. I don't want my own children, so like having nieces and nephews that range in ages from 22 to 2 years old gives me a lot of chosen family and bio family to kind of just witness and support. And I love being a uncle or tío. I love being able to like spoil them or like send my niece random money because her hair looks busted, and I was like, my niece is looking busted, go do your hair. And she's loved that her uncle is reaching that status in life now where he's like, I'm not living my rich gay uncle fantasies quite yet, but I'm doing much better this year than I was in the past.
Hey.
And so I aspire to be the rich uncle who travels the world with his lover or lovers. And yeah. And I'm also a friend and a connector. And those are all really important aspects of who I am. Yeah.
Thank you for like giving us that background context. I mean, I know that your work is deeply connected to who you are, so it's not necessarily as neatly compartmentalized, but it's always nice to hear like a different side that doesn't focus on like the work specifically, just like you as a human being, right?
Yeah. I'm imperfect, I'm messy. I am in my mid 30s. I'm queer as fudge. Fuck is my show. I can curse. I'm queer as fuck. I am proud of being disabled. I forgot to mention that. Like, listen, my disabled identity has not been as apparent in many years, but as I've aged, my disability has the identity of being disabled, being born disabled, has resurfaced to the front of my consciousness. Because my body has changed so much due to aging and my disability that people don't talk enough about with adult cerebral palsy. So yeah, and my disability identity has been at the forefront of my mind a lot lately. And the forthcoming title, or the title of my forthcoming memoir, whenever I get a literary agent and get that process done, is called Crippled But Not Broken. A manifesto for those who have fallen down. So yeah. And most and foremost of all my identities, I'm a storyteller. Like, yes, that's my profession, but also who I am at my core.
I appreciate that. I recently read something about James Baldwin, and this poet was writing about his suicide attempts and just like his bouts of depression throughout his life. And she was just saying that oftentimes when it comes to like really like notable artists that people are inspired by, they tend to sanitize their lives. And also, in addition to that, like
my life is messy. They better not sanitize it, honey. It's gonna be a great Netflix show one day or a movie.
And she used this term exotic survivors as if like so much of the pain in retrospect is like stylized and like they were just like dramatically suffering. But like, no, like people are real human beings. People are going through it and feeling the pain. And so I'm glad.
And still doing the work. I think that's the crazy part, especially for you as a therapist. Like, I don't know how you got through the pandemic because, baby, I told my therapist, Phoenix.
It was a lot.
I told Phoenix, I was like, bless your heart, honey, because I could never. It couldn't be me.
And it's these very human moments that like make us gravitate toward the work in our early years. And so it wouldn't be an Araya guest appearance if I didn't bring some like artifacts. I brought some,
oh my God, I love this. You're so nerding out right now. I love this. Go ahead.
So I'm going to ask you about your early years in journalism, right?
Oh my God, do not tell me you went to the archives and found old pieces I wrote.
No. I found some old pieces that I wrote, and I want
good.
to
Okay. Like, I was about to cringe. I was like, no, you didn't.
Like these like basic.
Is that from your college years?
This is high school, and I was looking back at this, and it was like, this is like Ready for Revolution by Stokely Carmichael, a review, Black, White, and Jewish by Rebecca Walker. I was really trying, and I mean, I was the only Black kid on the staff, so I was trying to like expose people to different things.
Well,
And
so
then this is like a John Legend
what
review.
Araya is trying to allude to is that they've always been that person and that badass. Okay, sorry.
Thank you. It didn't feel like that. But it surely did not feel like that. But
Yeah.
child, I tried. And so yeah, I mean, Corinne Bailey Ray is an album that I wrote an article about. And so
Wow.
just like stuff like that, like I needed an outlet when I was younger just to like
Mhm.
express myself, explore my identity, explore my values, explore my spirituality, all of those things, right? And we're not given answers by our parents a lot of times. We're not given shortcuts, roadmaps, role models. And so, like, we get drawn to the arts, we get drawn to writing, to performance, to dance, all these things. And so, since we're on a podcast about storytelling, I wanted to ask you, like, can you just paint a picture of your early years of journalism and storytelling? And just also describe how it was a vehicle for you to explore your identity, your values, your spirituality, perhaps in the absence of like a role model or just a roadmap
Or a father.
or a
Uh,
father on a very personal level, like, the parents.
yeah. And so for those of you who know, Araya's asking the questions without a sequence, and that's okay because I'm not the host today. Araya is, and so Araya, we're gonna go with whatever flow Araya brings us in. But they have committed to asking all three of those standard questions, so I know we'll
Yes.
get there. I have to say, it was because I was born premature. My mom gave birth to me at 5.5 months. I weighed
Mm,
1 pound. I'm
mm,
not gonna say how much I weigh now, but it's a lot more than 1 pound. It's okay. Yeah. I wear it well, I think, but it's a lot. And I remember because of my physical disability and because it was so severe growing up,
mhm,
before I understood what racism was, before I knew what homophobia was or transphobia or classism, I
mm,
knew what it meant to be othered and not to belong because my feet were inverted.
mhm,
And so what happened is there'd be times in gym that I couldn't play because I was too much of a liability. And
mhm,
so this is especially true in K to 4. I went to an
mm,
elementary school that was accessible and I went to a public school my entire childhood.
mhm,
And I remember my ex best friend from that time period,
mhm,
Nate or Nathaniel, had called me a freak one day
mm,
when we got into an argument in the cafeteria, and it happened to be in that moment when everyone got really, really quiet, and then he just said, "You
mm.
freaking freak." And he also stole my girlfriend at the time, which Tiara, which I don't
Wow,
care about that right
Nate.
now. But yeah, Nate, Nathaniel, wherever you are, I wish you well. Uh, but I remember just feeling really ostracized. And one of my other dear friends from that time period, Michelle, who would go on to be one of my best friends at the time, also has cerebral palsy. So we were kind of going through it similarly together.
Mhm,
But she was, obviously a young girl. I was a young boy. And I remember wanting to play gym and being told I have to sit out and can't do certain things.
mhm,
And I found refuge in those black and white marble journals.
mhm,
And I just started to write.
mm,
And it started off as writing song lyrics and then
mhm,
poems and then essays and then poems. I won my first poetry contest for the Dare Citywide Poetry. I tied for first place in my grade bracket.
mhm,
Um, the year that they did the Dare Poetry contest, and I don't even remember what I wrote, but I just remember thinking, "Oh, I won a contest." And that kind of planted a seed. And at the same time as I was discovering, what it meant to be otherized or to be othered and to not belong, I started to read, and disclaimer, I have to say this because I know currently what this person represents is counter to my values
mm,
and counter to who I am. And it's really unfortunate that the very person who inspired me to become or pursue professional writing has turned out to be a turf and someone who is just anti-trans and doing some really harmful shit with her power and platform.
mhm,
But J.K. Rowling, my third grade English teacher or language arts teacher,
mhm,
Mrs. Lathan. Mrs. Lathan introduced me to the Harry Potter series when I was in third grade, and that series followed me as I grew up. And it's a big reason why I am a storyteller
mm,
because I could relate to Harry so much about being othered
Mm-hmm.
and yearning to belong, yearning for a place, a world where he didn't feel like the odd one out. And
Mm-hmm.
then suddenly realizing why he was the odd one out and
Right.
how that made him special.
Mm-hmm.
And so I became a writer in part because of the Harry Potter series. And it was just my way of processing. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I always say I have three major ways of processing information.
Hmm.
One is external processing, meaning talking to a therapist, talking to someone. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
the next is writing things down.
Okay.
Typically, I start with the writing piece, then I go into the external processing with my therapist or trusted confidant.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third part of my processing process is movement, somatic. I have to move my body. For it
Mm-hmm.
to fully get out of me, I have to do those things. And
Mm-hmm.
so it would start with the journaling.
Mm-hmm.
And as I progressed in life and started to pursue dance, it movement became a thing, right? And so that's how I process a lot of what I go through in my life now is through those
Hmm.
different avenues. Sometimes they're independent of each other. Sometimes I have to do all three depending on the severity of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how I became a writer. And then I realized I couldn't sing, so I stopped writing songs and I started writing poems. Because again, very much the J Love my friend group, even though she sounds much better than I do. And love J Lo. Don't those J lovers don't come for me. I'm just joking. And so yeah, and that's kind of how I got into writing. And I remember, like you, I was writing for the school newspaper, and actually that was what led me to one of the biggest professional development internships of my early life. Was I participated in the Bergen Record and Herald News, now known as North Jersey Media Group,
Mm-hmm.
which is a daily paper in North Jersey, in their diversity and journalism program, which they had done for many years. And I was lucky because I think shortly after I did it, they had cut the funding.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go to the fellowship program, if you go to the program, you then get to be considered for a coveted summer internship at the editorial desk.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for a fact I wasn't the first pick, but I think what happened was the first pick turned it down, and so I guess I was second in line. I don't care. It all worked out.
Awesome.
And I'm actually still friends and in touch with all those people I met while I was in high school. And so I went to my senior year of high school that summer before doing this summer internship. And it's when that's when the Mojo mobile journalist thing started to really rise up, where like journalists were expected to write copy, capture footage on the go, do
Yes.
all the things, right? It was just at the age of social media, all these things were happening. And so I
Mm-hmm.
came in at a time where traditional print journalism was still very much a viable industry,
Yeah.
but it was already starting. We all started to see the writing on the wall, no pun intended.
Yeah.
Um, and I had been studying journalism and communications in high school. That was my major in high school was
Gotcha.
communications and a minor in dance. And I remember writing, and I remember this one particular editor, a white woman, looked at my high school clippings at the time, and she was like, "You don't have what it takes to be a journalist."
Oh,
Uh huh. I wish I could tell you that's the first time a white woman has told me I don't have what it takes. I'm not good enough, but it's not.
that's such a demoralizing thing to tell a
Uh
child.
huh. Well, with black and brown kids, they don't see us as children.
Adultified, so
We're
they think
very,
that you can handle it or that
yeah,
you're
we
tough
can handle
enough
it.
to,
Yeah.
you know.
And yeah, was there better writers than me? Of course. Am I the best writer in the world? Of course I'm not. But the idea that someone would, and that's the reason why I never pursued my dreams of being a full-time journalist.
Hmm.
It was the only time in my life, Araya, that I ever let someone's opinion of me make me defer from
Hmm.
following a dream. I would go on to use those skills in college and be a news editor of my school paper, and I would go on to write for Huffington Post and Fox News Latino and
Mm-hmm,
other
mm-hmm,
publications like the Star Ledger or Herald News. I would go on to become a TEDx speaker. I would go on to become an author. I would go on to become a contributing author for various publications. And I would continue to get published in various publications throughout high school and college. And
mm-hmm.
so, to that woman, wherever she may be, I also wish her well. But
Man.
you don't have to be the best at something to do something. You just have to be committed to the craft. And that's what I always tell young artists. I was like, you need to stop worrying about how talented you are or how untalented you are and really focus on the craft. And one of the things my high school creative writing teacher, Courtney Gotch, taught me and said to me my first year of high school, she said, There's the art of writing and the craft of writing.
Mm-hmm.
I can teach you the craft.
Mm-hmm.
I can't teach you talent. You either have it or you don't,
Yeah.
right? And she doesn't remember saying that, but I was like, girl, listen, even if you didn't say it at this point in my book and in my life, that you are who I attribute that saying, that experience to. So it had to be you, because she was she was ruthless with that red pen. I mean, she was,
Mm-hmm.
honey, she would humble you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a better writer for it, and she was one of those people. I remember, just I'm still in touch with all these people, right? It's a weird thing. Educators have played such a huge role in who I am. But yeah, that's how I kind of got into writing. It was a way for me to create my own world, my own sense of belonging, because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't belong.
Mm-hmm.
Despite being brown, despite growing up really, really poor in a single mother household, around other black and brown folks who were also in similar situations, my inverted feet made me stand out. And not only were my feet inverted, I was constantly tripping over myself.
Mm-hmm.
Constantly. It was like,
Mm-hmm.
that's where the subtitle of the title comes from, of my forthcoming memoir. You know, a manifesto for those who have fallen down.
Mm-hmm.
Because long before life started to knock me down, I knocked myself down,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to learn how to get back up, despite the embarrassment, despite the shame, despite the pain. I had no choice but to get back up,
Mm-hmm.
or else I wouldn't get to class on time,
Mm-hmm.
or else I wouldn't survive.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how writing saved my life. That's how writing shaped my life, and that's why I always tell people, like, never let someone knock your dreams, but also your dreams are allowed to change and evolve. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I thought I wanted to have a career in the New York Times, to be, a Pulitzer-winning journalist, an investigative journalist. Actually, I don't want to do that. Actually, I want to use storytelling. Sorry, this keeps shifting. I want to use storytelling, and I want to write and tell stories, but I don't necessarily have to do it in that traditional platform.
Mm-hmm.
But also, it was that training that taught me how to communicate to the masses.
Mm-hmm.
Fourth grade reading level. That is the
Mm-hmm.
extent of which I try to write. And because of my academic background, right, studying gender and sexuality in college and communications, I was also learning how to talk and write in academic ways and jargon and dense writing that, like, the everyday person wouldn't want to read. And that's why Brene Brown's first book was so hard to get through for most people. And it wasn't until she began to decentralize the academy in her writing style
Mm-hmm.
that she gained widespread notoriety and popularity, and people
Yeah.
knew more about her work. And
Yeah. I
so,
mean, yeah.
yeah,
It's not dumbing it down at all, I feel. I feel
it's
like if you
not.
have a voice, you can write. You can be a writer as long as you have a voice, and everyone has a
You're
voice.
writing for your
Period.
audience. But
Yeah.
also, it's like,
So,
if anything, I think it makes me a smarter writer, that I can take those academic jargon dense theoretical frameworks and dilute them down to everyday language that every single person that reads that article can understand.
and it makes me wonder, that teacher who gave you the feedback, the demoralizing feedback of like, you don't have what it takes to
Oh,
be
that was
right.
the editor. That was the news
Oh,
editor.
and
Yeah.
it makes me wonder what audience they had in mind, and
Hmm.
if that audience reflected your identities and communities that you belong to. Probably not. But
No.
it's like everyone has a voice, and there is an audience out there for everyone. So to tell someone that they don't belong in a writing community is like kind of oppressive if you really think about it, because there is space for everyone.
Well,
Period.
yeah, I mean, also you have to think about, right? Like, there's a reason why these associations for Black journalists exist. There's a reason why these associations for Latino journalists, and it's because too often journalism was not welcoming to people of color, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's always been a lack of representation of our stories in the mainstream media for a reason,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because you can't dehumanize people
Mm-hmm.
once people realize that they're human,
Yeah.
right? And so, how do you avoid humanizing us? You ban our books.
Mm-hmm.
You cancel shows. You don't let certain things happen. You try to ban drag queen shows, right? Or drag bingo, or drag, reading hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
All anything that's going to help us tell our story. Because what I know to be true,
Yeah.
and I will, how Oprah says, the one thing I know for sure, right? The one thing I know for certain is that stories can serve as a window for us to better understand someone who's different than us, or a mirror for us to see ourselves reflected.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes parts of someone's story is a mirror and parts of it are windows.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, it helps us recognize our shared humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment we get back to that, the moment we start talking to each other to hear each other, the
Mm-hmm.
moment especially Black and Brown folks, the moment we return back to the indigenous oral storytelling of how we preserved our family's history,
Mm-hmm.
our experience, the moment we get back to that, to actually sharing stories of how we overcame and endured, and stop trying to fragment us based on sexuality or economics or respectability politics, right? All those things is being done for a reason,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when people look at me, they think of me as a creative first and foremost, which is great because I am a creative. Or they think of me as an activist because I do a lot of speaking engagements. Or they think of me as a fashionista because they think I have good style. And rarely am I considered an intellectual.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I remember once. Oh, I'm not gonna cry because I have too much makeup on. Uh, but I remember one of my dear friends who unfortunately has been struggling with a substance addiction. He's about 15 years older than me, and he was um, a well-respected, renowned scholar in his subject area and teaching at some of the best top schools in the country. And I remember him telling me once, he's like, Mark, had you and I
Mm-hmm.
had you and I been in school together, we would have been contemporaries.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the first time, and I'm getting emotional not because of him saying that, it's because of what he's struggling with and
Mm-hmm.
how we as Black and brown queer folks are not talking about how crystal meth and substance misuse and abuse is destroying us and our communities. But that's a separate conversation. But I remember him saying that, and when he said it, I was like, are you serious?" He's like, "Yeah, you're brilliant."
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the first time my teacher ever called me smart, not creative, not kind, not talkative, but smart. I was in college.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I feel like a big misconception about journalism and writing is that it's supposed to be this fancy intellectual thing when really it's about, for, minoritized communities, like access to vital information, like awareness and consciousness raising, deconditioning a lot of the things that we've internalized, community building. It's so much bigger than just like the style and the
Mhm,
formality. And a lot of
mhm,
times when you get mentorship or guidance or teaching from these sort of like colonial institutions, they focus on the very surface level things. And it's
mhm,
like, that's not the value of writing for my community.
mhm.
It's about access to information that we
Right.
need to survive.
And I think when you think about freedom of the press and why you think that's, there's a reason why the framing founders of this country, I don't like to say fathers because they didn't father me, the
Yeah.
framing founders of this country um, added that in the First Amendment was for a reason because they know that a misinformed
Mm-hmm.
society is one that can be overtaken and
Mm-hmm.
abused, right? We also have to think about how journalism at its core is not just viable information for minority groups, but for people who live in rural parts of the country where otherwise they don't have access to this kind of technology that we have in certain parts of the country,
Mm-hmm.
or they won't get any alerts unless there's a local PBS station or NPR station, right? And so all of these things that are happening right now, the dismantling um, of NPR's funding, public broadcasting funding, the attempts to cancel comedians who speak critically and their
Mm-hmm.
daytime and their late night talk shows, the desire to try to only have people focus on Fox News and not focus on other news outlets and not letting them be included in certain briefings,
Mm-hmm.
the banning of books, right? Like all these things is meant to fester ignorance.
Yeah.
And ignorance, you can be ignorant about something, right? But that's not what makes you a bigot,
Mm-hmm.
right? Ignorance simply means you do not know, you were misinformed, right? But the moment you know better, the moment you are taught,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you continue to engage in that kind of behavior, that's when it goes from ignorance to bigotry.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you know better, to quote the great Maya Angelou, one of my favorite storytellers, you do better,
You do better.
right? So then that is why what's happening right now is so scary in our country, because it is a direct attempt to disconnect us from each other,
Mm-hmm.
to allow for misinformation and disinformation to run rampant,
That's a big one.
right? Because they know that an uninformed individual is an individual that is more susceptible to being manipulated, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're thinking that because of the color of their skin, they are innately better than this
Mm-hmm.
other human being across from them.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, that person can be dehumanized if that means he gets to be empowered.
Mm-hmm.
Despite,
Sort of got into the third question, which was like your personal concept of resistance and resilience.
yeah,
But this is all related to it because, like I
yes,
said, for us, this is about much more than just, literacy for the sake of reading. It's
yeah,
much more than like learning style and,
yeah.
the decorum of writing. This is about access to vital information and awareness and consciousness raising
And
that our
before it's
livelihood.
that, and before it was that for me, it was about self-preservation. It was about me
Yes.
writing myself to stay alive.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my depressed state, in my most depressed moments, even earlier this week, I was crying in my bed, really sad. And I just started writing some stuff, and I felt better. The next day, I woke up and I felt lighter in my spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Because people don't know this about me, but my default is sadness. Like I
Mm,
know I come off as bubbly and like really personable and really positive, and I am those things in many
that's
ways.
that Pisces moon.
Yeah, I have. Oh, now you're reading me for being Pisces moon. But
That's that
yes,
moon.
yes, it is very much Pisces moon, and so I have to work on being like optimistic, and I have to
Mhm,
work on saying good morning, beautiful people. Like let's
mhm.
have a good morning, like because that's not always the case for me. And
Yeah.
so this book, for example, to answer your question around like what writing it is for me, I
Mhm,
self-published this book in 2017. This little book, right? Not long, maybe 100 pages, is one of the few books I believe, and someone can yell at me if I'm wrong. There are no major collections of creative nonfiction and poetry or hybrids
mm,
that focus on the intersections of Latinidad, queerness, and disability without the immigrant lens.
mm,
Too often, when you look at the lexicon of LGBTQ stories and Latinidad, there's always an undertone or direct lineage to immigration.
mhm,
But because my family have been U.S. citizens since the Jones Act, that
mm,
is not my experience, right?
mhm,
The first time I ever saw a queer Puerto Rican, it was Noah's Ark and Ricky,
mhm.
right? But what happens when we can't see ourselves in the stories we consume? We don't know what's possible.
You don't know what's possible.
And to quote my ex-lover, Sean Aaron, host and producer and creator of the Dem Boys podcast, visibility equals possibility.
Mhm,
But when you don't have blueprints,
mhm.
when you are the blueprint, your journey is a lot harder. And
Mhm,
what I wanted for future, because this book is going to outlive me, right? It's going to outlive you. Hell, hopefully it's going to outlive all the
mhm,
crazy folks out here. I should say crazy, but I should say wild folks doing some wild shit. Um, is that next time a little brown, queer, feminine, disabled Boricua is Googling Puerto Rican, disabled, queer,
mm,
my name in this book will pop up.
mhm,
And they will see parts of themselves reflected.
mhm,
And that's why I'm working on book number 2 of the series called Revisions.
mm.
Because the work continues and I'm
The
constantly in
work
a state of
continues.
revising. And so it's, for me, my personal concepts of resistance and resilience is simple. Simple.
What did
Every
James
day.
Baldwin say? I think he had a quote. It was like, "The space in which I will fit will not exist until I create it."
Yeah.
And that's sort of like the feeling. It's It's both, I think, liberating and burdensome at the same time. I don't know if anybody
Absolutely.
can speak to that, but like, I mean, there's something definitely empowering about like
Oh my God.
putting your story out there and like drawing it all together and having all these moments
Yes.
become like this coherent thing that you can share with the world, and you know that like it's going to reach other people who may feel alienated, like they don't, think it's possible for
Yeah.
them to survive this very common experience that they're not even aware is somewhat universal to minoritized folks.
Yeah.
Okay, that's empowering, but at the same time, to have the burden of doing that when you have no blueprint yourself, no role model yourself, you're scrounging together a support system for yourself. I mean, being an artist in that way is not this glamorous thing that, Hollywood makes it out to be.
Oh, hell no. And even being an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
right? I'm sorry, y'all. Did I hear that dog barking? Do you hear the dog barking?
No.
Oh, because it's killing. We have a new neighbor that lives upstairs from me, and that dog, it just be barking, and I'm not an animal person, and like we're used to having like cats for neighbors on the first
Yeah.
floor, but the dog
Oh,
on the
that's
second
very
floor is
different.
not it. I feel like if you have a dog, you need to live on the first floor of any apartment building because that's the courteous thing to do. Anywho, sorry, his barking was driving me nuts.
No.
ADHD. But to answer your question, to go back to what we were talking about, it is exhausting. It's being a cycle breaker is hard and exhausting. And yet, right? Yes, it is often exhausting and compounded and unfair. And I'm thankful that I'm the first one in my immediate family to be able to graduate high school and go to college and graduate. I'm grateful to have been the one to break that cycle because it made it easier for my niece. And it'll continue to make it easier for future generations because the moment there's a blueprint, there is a way.
There's a way. There's a way, you know?
Right? Again, going back to why do people gatekeep? Why do people try to keep certain people out of certain positions, right? Because they know that if we create the blueprint,
Yeah.
right? If we stop centralizing information or hoarding information away from people and opportunities away from people, then they will recognize they being the minority in power right now, because they're not the
Mhm.
majority of this country anymore. They will realize that there is nothing extraordinary about them.
Yeah. That
And
the
that is what,
supremacy is a facade.
yes, the facade. And
It's
that is
really
what they're afraid of. They're afraid of recognizing their ordinariness.
And I think for us, the inverse is true, where stories help us realize that the deficiencies and the defects that we have been taught to, internalize and see ourselves
Are not true.
in ourselves are not true.
Hell no.
And it's all unnecessary to hold on to that and to center that in our identity. It only keeps us back. But it's not until you witness other people sort of like tell their story and how they overcame what they've been through that you realize, oh, wait, there's a lot of strength in my own community. There's a lot of empowerment to be drawn from my own identity. I don't need to align myself with a group that doesn't even affirm me
Yeah.
just to feel like I'm somebody.
Right. And that false narrative, right, that will never be good enough.
Yeah, that will
Yeah.
never be good enough.
That white woman news editor thought I wasn't gonna be good enough.
Yeah.
My white woman guidance counselor in high school told me I had to choose between writing and dance because I wouldn't be able to do both of them well. Right? That last full-time job I had with that white woman supervisor who tried to gaslight me and tell me that I was never a finalist, even though she told me I was a finalist the entire time, and that I kept being passed over because they were threatened by my DEI presence and my presence online, right?
Oh,
And she
wow.
made it very clear to me that I would never get a promotion, that I would never become the role I applied for. And so I quit after 3 months. I was like,
Yeah.
one thing about me, I have very low patience for fuckery. And so the moment her true colors showed up, I
That's
was
okay.
out.
Yeah.
And I have had so many people, especially white women, and also to be fair to the other white women in my life who are lovely, for my best supporters of my work have been white women. It's
Mm,
a weird, like, I don't understand it because like
that's
it
interesting.
is the only segment or the only identity group or group in my orbit where the worst of the worst by
Hmm.
the hands of white women, and some of my most like consistent, strong advocates for my work have been white women.
Hmm.
It's a really, it's a weird dichotomy. I don't understand why that is. But yeah, so my personal, for me, it's a daily choice to be authentic, and my authenticity is an act of resistance,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
and my ability and willingness, not just my ability to, but my willingness to get back up when life knocks me down.
Mm-hmm.
That is my concept of resilience.
Mm-hmm.
Ability to be knocked down and get back up anyways,
Mm-hmm.
and put one crippled foot another.